Hello everyone, welcome to Monstrous Menagerie. Today we have a special treat for you.
It's an invasion! They're here! They're here!
As I was saying, today we have Eight-Legged Freaks, a movie about giant spiders run amok in a small town. Originally released in 2003, Eight-Legged Freaks is your typical biological oops creates giant monster problem for a small town. Then the townspeople have to band together to fight them off. Among the cast we have Scarlett Johansson many years before she would ever don the mantle of Black Widow for Marvel Studios. From other horror cinema we have David Arquette from the Scream franchise joining as well. And a young Scott Terra who is known as playing the child version of Daredevil in the 2003 Daredevil movie. Anybody wanting to watch this movie, I encourage you to do so, but don't go into it expecting a serious giant monster movie or something like that. This movie is basically a comedy featuring giant spiders. What? Don't believe me? Well, here's a picture. This is what happens when your ceiling is made of Play-Doh and your dumb cat tries to fight a giant spider. Can I get an F in the chat for Mittens? Anyway, our story opens on the small town of Prosperity, Arizona. And let's face it, with a name like Prosperity, something's gonna happen. Something terrible is bound to happen to this town. I swear in these movies, these towns are always named like Hope Springs or Peace Valley or something, and then something awful happens. In typical horror movie fashion, guy is driving a truck full of toxic waste, sees an animal in the road, swerves to miss it, and winds up dumping a barrel of the toxic sludge into a body of water. Later, the owner of an exotic pet store is there collecting feeding bugs for his spiders, not apparently noticing the chemical spill. He feeds the now toxic bugs to his spiders, and wouldn't you know it, starts making them bigger. And bigger. And oh no, wouldn't you know it, they broke out of their cages and decided to eat him. And basically from that point on the movie furthers as the spiders grow bigger and bigger, eventually breaking out and starting to run amok in the city. Featured in this movie are actually several different kinds of spiders, from the very fast, nimble, jumping spiders, very large orb weaver spiders, a huge tarantula the size of an SUV, and something very special at the end of the movie. We're going to break all these down as a group to discuss their strengths and weaknesses and how one might overcome these monstrosities. First up we have the jumpers, which have arguably the coolest scene in the entire movie. So basically, guy runs away because, giant spider. He meets up with his buddies, and oh no, there's more spiders. So they all hop on their dirt bikes and start hauling across the desert, with these jumping spiders jumping over dunes and just chasing them across the desert on their dirt bikes. It's one of those scenes that's just so ridiculous, but also just so fun and really cool to see. I don't know whose idea this scene was, but they deserve a lot of credit because I honestly think this is one of the scenes that kind of sold the movie, just because it's a really cool concept. But getting back on track, I would say the jumping spiders would be considered a swarmer enemy type, because of their ability to move so fast and coordinate with each other to catch their prey. Next up we have the cunning trapdoor spiders. I would consider these clever devils as tier 2 as well, as they have a decent amount of intelligence to be able to wait for their prey. Next we have the tarantula, or the tank. No, I'm not kidding, that's literally what the wiki for this movie calls the tarantula. They call it the tank. And I guess the movie just wanted to knock all the wind out of my sails because it went ahead and categorized this thing for me in its own wiki. Yes, this thing I would consider a tank. I mean, I see why. Look at the size of this damn thing. Hell, at one point in the story, he decides that a trailer being right side up is offensive to him and decides it needs to be flipped. So yeah, he's also strong as hell. At one point, Deputy Dingus decides to start shooting at the tarantula. I mean, I don't blame him, I would too. But I would probably use something bigger than a fucking 9mm pistol. Think, man, it's a big frickin' spider. What are you going to do besides tickle it with those tiny bullets? I've decided Deputy Willis is lower than fodder tier, and I honestly don't know how he's alive at the end of the movie. His plot armor is legendary. Anyway, side rant over. Moving on, we have the orb weavers. These and the jumping spiders make up the bulk of what we see running around in the movie. These are the most common, and all the ones you see in the movie are actually males going to try and gather up food to take to the female. Even though dealing with one by itself would be dangerous enough, they typically arrive in groups of 2 to 3 to try and hunt their prey. So I would consider these tier 2 at least. And as for their size, I'd say they have about a 4 to 5 foot leg span, at least. They're pretty freaking big. And last but not least, we have Consuela. Sorry, wrong Consuela. Ah, yes, this Consuela. The largest spider in the entire movie. Each of her legs is about 10 feet long, so she has quite a massive leg span on her. And no, the Consuela thing wasn't just a stupid throwaway joke. That's literally her name in the movie. How big is she exactly compared to a person, you might ask? Pretty fucking big. Yeah, she's basically the final boss monster of this movie, and definitely lives up to it. I would consider her a tier 3.5, because I feel like she could kill the tarantula. Alright, now that we have the categories in, it's time to round up the points for these monsters. The points for this are going to be a little bit different than future videos, because each of the spiders kind of represent their own thing and have different attributes on their own. So I'm just going to be collectively giving them a total score. First off, we have the tarantula for strength, demonstrating immense strength of tearing open the metal door and pushing over the entire trailer. I'm going to award 2 points. Next up in the category of agility, we have the jumping spiders. For how quickly they're able to bound across the landscape and how quickly they can pounce on their prey, I will award 4 points. For sneakiness and cunning, the trapdoor spider brings 3 points of intelligence to the table. But overall, every spider in the movie seems to work together in one way or another, giving the entire group another point of intelligence there on top of everything else. The tarantula is shown being shot multiple times with different firearms and being able to tear open a metal door without injuring itself, giving us a solid 3 endurance points. And Consuela would bring another 2 points of strength to the table and another 2 points of endurance. Altogether, the spider brood of this movie gets a score of 4.25. Now that the charts and scores are out of the way, let's discuss something practical. How you would fight this menace. What the best ways to protect yourself against these creatures would be. First of all, no melee. No melee at all. Melee is a horrible idea. The orb weavers alone have legs that have spines on them the size of a cactus thorn. Killing something like that with melee while it's grabbing you means that when the legs retract, because that's what spiders do when they die, it's basically pulling you into it, and because of those spikes, you now can't get out and you're trapped. You might have killed the one in front of you, but now you've got 2 more ready to eat you. And if you have to have a pistol, I would say just avoid small caliber. You want something with some stopping power, so something like, say, a 357 or 44 Magnums should work fine. Shotguns are always your best friend in just about any apocalypse, and that holds true for this movie as well. They're used in the movie quite a bit, actually. And as long as you're using either buckshot or deer slugs, I don't see any reason why these things couldn't do the job against any of these spiders. But I think the best weapon you could use would be crossbow or bows, as these would be silent enough to not call the rest of your location, and also have the punching power to get through their exoskeleton. For some bonus tips, as someone pointed out in the movie, their sense of smell is very strong, so they use perfume to spray. I would employ this by throwing perfume bottles on the ground while being chased to stop and confuse the spiders. Also, if you're gonna shoot it or hit it, aim for their large backside. No, really. Their abdomen has all their vital organs in it, and it should be your priority target. Who knows, if you follow these tips, you might just survive 8-legged freaks. Overall, this has always been one of my favorite movies when I was growing up. I remember watching it a lot with my mom. I probably drove her crazy watching this movie, but I think it stands out because back in the day, you just didn't have creature features like this. They decided instead of making it completely serious, they decided, you know what, we'll make it campy and fun, and I think that's unique. All images and clips from the movie used in this program belong to Village Roadshow Productions.